So yes, I've finally finished my Project Ibiza and I took it for its first MOT in nearly 4 years. But then sadly they refused to MOT it. But we'll explain more about that in a moment. First of all, when I started the engine for the first time at the end of the last video, there's a whole bunch of new problems which had appeared since starting the car. So I had to make sure I got them fixed before I could take it for this MOT. Now, although I completely revamped the brakes on this car, it was one of the many jobs on the list to do before I put it down for the MOT, that the brakes needed a complete flush out, make sure all the air was out of the system and that it had brand new fluid going through all the pipework. These pressurised brake bleeders are magic bits of kit. Save a lot of time, save having to pump the pedal the whole time as you're doing the brakes. You just work your way from corner to corner, taking out all the old fluid and air and putting in new fluid in place of it. And with all those air bubbles out of the way, it was time to test the brakes. Yeah, that didn't work. So after a few hours of bleeding the brake system, I'd gone back to the car and found it still didn't feel quite right. Looking at the back of the brake calipers, there was some weeping brake fluid coming through the bottom of the brake flexi on the front brake caliper. So I thought I'd swap over the washers to give it a better seal. With the new washers fitted, I cleaned up the whole area, re-bled this brake caliper completely to see if this helped it, and it still didn't fix it. So in the end, I had to opt for a brand new brake flexi instead, which solved the issue. Now, I've been aware the wiper's not working from day one. I did have a quick check of the fuses, but I was aware there was some slight movement in the wipers when I did try to move the wiper stock. So what I thought I'd do quickly is just put some WD-40 on all the joints along the wiper linkage to see if this might help the system move more freely and hopefully start working again. And with a bit of assistance from my arm at the same time as turning the wiper stock on, I started to move the wipers back and forth, and then they took care of themselves. There's a handy wee bleeder on the bottom of the radiator for the Ibiza, which drains out the coolant system, so I used this to take out all the old brown looking coolant and replace it with brand new pink G12 Plus coolant instead. I bought this handy coolant bleeder system from Amazon, which is meant to stop any air bubbles getting back into the system, so any air that comes out is replaced with fluid and it stops any overheating or air locks later on. Now, I had done a full service on the Ibiza in the last video, but there was one thing I didn't get a chance to do, and that was the pollen filter, which, as you can see, had not been changed for ages. This was disgusting. To think that you could breathe in this stuff when you turn on the fans inside the car is pretty scary, actually. And looking at the side of the old pollen filter, you can see the date on it, so it's back to front, so it's the 24th of January 2013, so this was about 10 years old, this pollen filter, and yeah, definitely needed change. Now, I picked up these exhaust heat shield retaining clips on Temu, actually, that were free, along with a few other purchases, and they worked perfectly. They actually held the whole shield on properly in place, and then I just used a socket then to kind of hammer them up further to hold the exhaust heat shield up tight to the bottom of the car. Then it was on to putting the exhaust system back on the car. So this has been off from day one of receiving the car to basically drain all the old turbo oil out of the exhaust system. So I had them upright outside in buckets, trying to get all the old oil out of them before putting them back on the car, hopefully that they wouldn't smoke too much. And just prior to getting the back box on, I did trim off a bit of the excess flaps of metal that were flapping around so they wouldn't get caught on the underside of the car at the same time. Once the exhaust system was fit, I ran the car to get up to temperature, and I noticed there was still oil spurting out the back of the exhaust. Not massive amounts, but still residue coming out of there, a bit of smoke as well, and all the joints under the exhaust were starting to leak oil as well. So I thought I'd put some exhaust paste, black exhaust paste, around all the brackets to see if that would seal up the whole system properly. I find it's always easy to tell if someone's got a project car is just look at their driveway for spots of oil, because this is clearly a project car that's left this mess on my driveway. Now, the fault light on the dashboard for the airbag would be an instant fail for the MOT, so I had to get rid of this somehow. So using my OBDeleven system, which I've had for about 10 years now and has been really good for solving lots of issues like this, I plugged it into the car, scanned it for fault codes, and then cleared all the fault codes that I could off the system. Now, the airbag light was a bit of a hassle. It's because of the aftermarket Fabia leather seats inside the car with the airbags in the seats. So it took a bit of jiggling to try and get the system to recognise them as new airbags. Once it did though, the light disappeared off the dashboard. If you want to get OBDeleven for yourself, I've left an affiliate link down below in the description, so if you buy it through that link, you'll help support the channel. Then a quick top up of diesel system cleaner and some diesel as well to get it off the driveway down to the MOT station, along with some new mats because the tatty carpet inside Ibiza lets it down a bit, so these new mats finish off the interior perfectly. Car mats for you I use for all my car mats in all my cars over the years. Not sponsored anyway, but they are really good mats and they come with original fittings as well if you have them in the carpet. So it's MOT day finally for the Ibiza after all this time, and nearly exactly a year actually since purchasing this car. It's now time to put it through its MOT. I've just had a few things I've done basically to check that I can do myself, like checking the seat belts, making sure they plug in and they're secure and they stop as well. And I also went around the whole of the car as well and checked all the lights, which I'll show you on the screen just now. Make sure all the lights work, and it's just one side repeater in a driver's side wing that I had to replace. Other things I can't check though, like the emissions, I can't check that. If there's anything that's badly worn, like any bushes on the car, that'll be up to them to pick up. Fingers crossed it passes. I'm going to just come, I forgot to say, I'm just back from a night shift and I'm taking the car down to the garage in the morning. I take my to nursery, I'm going to drop it off, let it get MOT'd, I'll go straight to sleep then, and then I'll wake up to probably a notification on my phone actually, because I've got this Know Your Car app, it's called, and it will ping your MOT results, whether you fail or pass, straight away. Actually, before I get the phone call from the garage, I'll get the notification on my phone, so something to wake up to in a few hours time. Fingers crossed it passes, but I just don't know. But what I do find is always helpful is if you just leave £20 in the sun visor, you know, just tucked in there. Yeah, I just find that £20 in the sun visor usually gets it through the MOT, no bother. So yeah, I've been called this afternoon to come and pick the car up for this refusal of MOT. So it didn't pass, it didn't fail, I just couldn't continue the MOT on because of a leak in oil from the front and leaking oil from the exhaust system as well. When I came down, they said basically it was just, as it was heating up to temperature, the car was sitting inside the MOT station and it was smoking really badly and filling the whole garage with smoke. So they had to call a halt, they had to turn the engine off and get the car out of there, obviously health and safety reasons, which I don't blame them about at all. I would be totally the same if that was my garage filling with smoke. So they said the oil was coming out the exhaust, which they were unsure about, so I did tell them about the issue with the blown turbo from before, and that did fill the whole exhaust system with oil, which I thought I drained out the majority of, but once it's up to temperature, that exhaust system is just seeping out oil from the catalytic converter and the silencers, so there's just no proper way to get rid of it at all. So I have now ordered a brand new exhaust system with a new catalytic converter and an aftermarket stainless steel back box to go in the car, and then hopefully that will completely clear that issue up. The oil from the back of the engine was because the rocker cover gasket had been leaking and was just draining oil down the back of the engine. So once it's up to temperature, that residue from the oil was just starting to drip off and that was causing another oil leak. So I'll give that a quick wash and try and clean that all up as well. Graham as well kindly mentioned when he did have the car running for a short period on the ramp in the MOT station that he noticed that the front headlight wasn't looking at the right direction at all. It was dipped right down. He wasn't sure if it was the setting under the bonnet that was the issue or maybe a bracket was slightly misadjusted, so he just said to check that as well when I've got the car back at home, just to save that appearing on the MOT when I bring it back at a later date. So with those two oil issues, basically the back of the engine and the whole exhaust system needing addressed, I'll get them sorted as soon as that exhaust turns up, and then we'll pop the car back down for a second MOT and see how it gets on next time. Looking under the car, you can see the oil was still coming out of the exhaust clamps, so this was no use at all. This system had to come off the car alongside the brand new exhaust system, which cost about £400 roughly to replace both sections. Now this didn't fit exactly perfectly. I felt the exhaust tips were a wee bit short at the end of the bumper in the end, but it was fine in the sense that there was no more smoke, no more oil leaks at all, and it was running perfectly. So yeah, Graham was right. The dip beam on one headlamp, the driver's headlamp, is really low for some reason. So before I actually got under the bonnet to start adjusting it, I had a quick look into the headlamp itself and noticed the bulb hadn't been fitted correctly in the back of the headlight. A quick removal and refitting of the bulb meant it sat perfectly inside the back of the headlamp, turned the headlights back on, and they sat pretty much perfectly in line. With all those issues fixed now on the car, nearly ready for round 2 of its MOT, let's have a quick showcase of how the car is looking. So yeah, the car, as you can see, has passed with no advisories as well. I haven't actually got the MOT paper on me, it's at home on my wall, framed of course. There's a few issues I'm aware with the car, though it's not perfect. The brakes are still a bit soft, they're enough to pass the MOT, but they are still needing attention, so it could be the ABS module because that was still a flagged up issue on the OBD scanner. Also there's weird noises and rattles coming off the engine once it's warmed up. And talking warmed up as well, once the engine is warmed up, it seems to be slightly harder to start, which is really strange. Usually diesels are hard to start when they're cold. So if anyone has ideas about why a warm start issue happens on a diesel car, please let me know down below in the comments. This weather as well is disgusting. It's the end of May and it was been beautiful the last few weeks, and then the last 2 days has been like this. It was just disgusting. I've just come back from the North Coast 500, which we had beautiful weather for most of that, and this is what I come home to, so lovely, yeah. Now if you are interested in a full breakdown of the cost of this car, what all the parts have cost me, what the car's cost me, what it owes me overall, I've already posted the breakdown on my free newsletter which I send out each month to my readers, so they've already seen that. But if you want to see that on YouTube, I'll pop it in the next video on the channel. And that brings me to the next question. Where do I take this car from here? Do I just run it? Because the plan was with this car to keep it on the road just now, take the Cupra off the road to refurbish it over winter time. There's a lot of suspension needs reconditioned underneath. So do I just run this car just now as it is, don't touch it, and then when the Cupra's back on the road, just sell up and then maybe break even for the price this car owes me? Or do I modify it? Because I'm a bloke who likes modifying cars. So yeah, obviously know what I'm tempted to do, but yeah, let me know down in the comments what you think I should do with the car. Obviously if I modify it, I'm not going to increase the value massively at all, if at any value at all. It will just be purely for the satisfaction of driving around the car that looks better than standard. So yeah, let me know what you think I should do. Should I just keep it as is, run it into the ground, or run it until I can get the Cupra back on the road and then sell it as is? Or do I modify it tastefully to keep myself entertained and also make the car look a little bit better than standard as well? So of course this won't be the last time you see the car on the channel. I'm just really pleased with myself actually to have achieved my first project car, get it back on the road, MOT'd, and with no advisories, as I keep saying. This car a year ago was sat at the back of a garage in a yard, pretty much waiting to get broken for parts. It was a really sorry state, so it's finally back on the road and being made full use of as well. So if you've enjoyed the video so far, hit the thumbs up button. If you want to catch more videos on the Ibiza and the Cupra of course, and any other stuff on the channel, hit the subscribe button down below, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.